Everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about critical reflection. So just to talk a little bit about critical reflection and the mission and values of FASS. So in order to uphold the FASS missions and values, constant reflection should be done by clients, staff, and supervisors in order to evaluate past actions and inform future ones. So critical reflection is done in order for the practitioner to understand how knowledge is generated, and further, how relations of power influence the process of knowledge generation. So the process of critical reflection is extremely necessary in order to empower clients and highlight systemic structures. So reflecting on and using personal experiences is the best way to understand these concepts. So to talk a little bit about myself and critical reflection, critical reflection can lead to power being reframed from a self-affirming, holistic lens that is beneficial when working with members of a marginalized community. So although I have always been a reflective person, I was given a lot of constructive feedback from the owner of a learning support company I worked at. She made me do weekly reflections, and through habitual self-reflection, I was able to process my observations and adjust my actions and behaviors in order to better work with others. So I noticed that I was able to find more effective solutions, create stronger relationships, and receive better feedback. I found that I was also able to create better, more conclusive goals for myself and address some of areas of practice that I need to work on. So ultimately, critical reflection is just using one's past experience as a source of knowledge. So it is useful in confronting bias. So that's personal or it's personal bias or just bias in general about other things. It's useful in defining questions, and it's again useful in identifying systemic issues. So essentially, it is just a reasoning process that makes meaning from an experience. So secondly, the process of critical reflection means asking oneself critical questions. So this is the continuous cycle of critical reflection. As you can see, we have concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. And in each phase, these are some of the questions that are really important to ask in order to create a critical reflection. So in each of these phases, a concrete experience might look like having a negative interaction with another person. So after doing after reflecting on the experience, which would be this reflective observation phase, you would then create conclusions. You would draw conclusions from that experience, and then use those conclusions to inform your future actions and behavior. So when that experience happens again, you have better ways to deal with it, or you're just more knowledgeable about how to handle the situation. So critical reflection in social work should be a constant and conscious process occurring before, during, and after any interaction with a service user. So practicing critical reflection should also be done with coworkers and other professionals. So it's important to use, critical reflection helps understand another's social location and can help one provide more accurate resources. If I, as a service provider, am able to understand, if I'm able to understand and reflect on where someone else's position might be or identity might be, I'm better able to find appropriate resources for them. And secondly, it's important to use critical reflection during interviews, assessment, evaluation, and intake procedures, as it can provide important insight to the individual's behaviors and more about their personality and, again, social location. So some of the challenges with critical reflection is it can be difficult to actually utilize critical reflection in practice. In reality, emotions and preconceived biases often get in the way. So again, this has to be a conscious practice, and it does take time and discipline to master. So many people do believe that it is kind of an unconscious process, that everyone's that it's an unconscious process, it's easy, and it actually is quite difficult. So to make it easier and to make it more habitual, reflection needs to be done daily, weekly. It needs to be consistent. So on another note, when someone has multiple intersecting oppressions, it can be difficult to understand which behaviors are a result of which oppression. For example, if someone comes from a racialized community, also comes from a low-income community, and has a mental illness, it's difficult to determine what behavior is coming from which of the problems or a combination of the problems. So it can be difficult. Yeah. So even through a process of critical reflection, you might still not get some answers. So some skills for critical reflection, I'm just going to be talking about 3 that I think are super important. The first one is deconstruction. So deconstructing roles and identities in order to understand the position of the practitioner and the service user. So just clearly defining roles and trying to deconstruct power relations in the service user and practitioner relationship. That's really important in order to understand each other better. So a second one is determining personal bias. So using self-reflection to recognize preconceived notions that one might have, and then using this reflection using the continuous process cycle of critical reflection to reflect on where they come from, and then how they might manifest in practice and one's daily lived experiences. So lastly, defining social location is another skill used towards critical reflection, and it comes from understanding the privileges and oppressions one holds and how it is viewed by others. So understanding another social location by asking questions that seek to elicit responses in a non-intrusive way is extremely important, especially as a practitioner. So especially considering where power is held in the relationship between an organization versus the service user and a practitioner versus the service user. So that's all part of defining one's social location, and then also it kind of goes back into the deconstruction process. Yeah, so these are my references. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact the page, and we are always looking forward to helping you and answering all your questions and concerns. Thank you.